Welcome to the Lawrence County Oral History Project. We're glad to have you back, and this is a special segment because it's our very first Christmas segment that we've ever had on the Lawrence County Oral History Project. And so we're glad that you decided to join us today, and I think you're going to enjoy what we're going to be talking about. Two areas in which I have interest, especially this time of year. I like talking about Christmas. And I love talking about the eras of 1930s and the 1940s. So we're going to go back down memory lane today. In fact, maybe 60, 70 years, a long time back, to discuss what Christmas was like in Lawrence County back in the 1930s and the 1940s. I've always enjoyed those years because I've always enjoyed reading about the Great Depression. I've mentioned on previous programs that The Grapes of Wrath left an impact on my life when I read that book. And it's just a must-read, I believe, for everybody. It's a fantastic book. That stirred my interest into the Great Depression era. And it grew later on to World War II, which has been an interest area of mine. And I've enjoyed over these last few months interviewing these fine World War II veterans. And so the 1930s and 1940s has been just a special interest area of mine. And how many could not enjoy Christmas? I mean, it's just a special, unique time of the year, and it's a magical time in a lot of ways. And as we get older, we find that the Christmases of the past just mean so much to us as we grow older. And these memories have not dimmed for me, of my Christmases. They've become very special. A few years ago, my mother doesn't like for me to talk about her so much on air, but she can't stop me at this point in time. She can talk to me later about it. But I came home one day, and the Santa, the little lighted Santa, he was only about this tall, and he was starting to lose some of his color, and it looked beat up for the years that he's been around. But this Santa had been with me every single Christmas of my life. So I'm 54, and this Santa is at least 54 too. And he's just a little bitty Santa, but I can remember him being in the window of our house every single year. And I love to go and look at him every year. And here I came home, and Mom had him in the trash. Well, she said, well, this was just an old, and I thought, Mom, you can't do that. And I rescued Santa. This is one of the proudest days of my life, of being able to rescue this Santa. And I got him out of the trash, and I took him home and cleaned him up some, and he is my very first Christmas ornament I get out every year, and he is my special Christmas ornament. So, Mom, you'll appreciate this story. But what I'm finding is that as we get older, especially, that there are those special things that we hold dear. They may not have a lot of monetary value, but they have a lot of sentimental value. Would you agree with that, ladies, that there may be that special thing? And this is my special Christmas ornament. And I'm going to ask these ladies in a few moments, we're going to talk about that. Well, what's kind of your special things? And we're going to go back to the 1930s and the 1940s and talk about what Christmas was like during those years. As one gentleman told me, he said, you know, they say that the Depression was going on between 1929 and 1939. Well, the Depression for my family and for many in Lawrence County didn't end in 1939. It was going on for a long time, and well into the 40s, where we didn't have much money in the 40s either. So when we say 1929 to 1939 was a depression, it's not necessarily so. It went on, didn't it, ladies, for years in the 1940s, and that's some of the things that we're going to talk about. So we're going down memory lane today. We're going to be thinking about people that may not be with us anymore, but they hold a very special place in our heart every single time when we celebrate Christmas. And some of the memories we hold dear, and we hope that this program is going to just bring back some memories for you. And we love hearing about your stories as well. To my left, and just right next to me is a lady that I've got to know, especially at some at breakfast time, because we seem like we run into each other at breakfast.
That's what we do best.
That's what we do, and we're good at that. And this is Janet Boruff, just right next to me, my left. Now, she may not look familiar to you, but her husband Claude has been one of the World War II veterans that we've had on the program. And Claude allowed her to be out here today. Boy, that was nice of him, wasn't it? And he's taking care of things at home, evidently. And so we're going to get to know more about Janet just a little bit later as well. The lady in the middle in the white sweatshirt, this is Delilah Taylor. Delilah and I are not any relation as far as the Taylor side goes. Now, we may be a relation somewhere else along the line. We've talked about this a little. But the Taylor side, we're not. But Delilah and I have worked together from the very first when we started having the Lawrence County History Festival. She was responsible for the food for several years, just has been an invaluable part of establishing the Lawrence County History Festival, and has been just a big help to me over the years. Has always provided a great big pot of beans that just help make that event special, along with your son. And Delilah has been a valued member of the Lawrence County Museum for several years, and we share the dream and the passion of preserving history. Yes, I know this about Delilah. And this is what this program is about. We want to preserve history, and Delilah, thanks for being here today as well.
Thanks for asking.
On the far end is a lady actually that we worked together for a few years at Lincoln back years ago. This is Mary Catherine Martin. Mary is the mother of the director of the Lawrence County North Lawrence Career Center, Dwayne Martin. And I've known Mary for some time, and Mary, it's good having you with us today.
Thank you.
I'm hoping for some embarrassing stories, but not necessarily. We'll a little bit. But Mary has been a long-time educator in the school system in elementary days, and so she could probably talk about a lot of Christmases dealing with education. Well, Janet, tell me a little bit about way back whenever you were young, a little bit about your family. Maybe how many brothers, sisters did you have? What did your mom and dad do? Give us a little bit of background there.
I have one sister. She lives in Salem. She's still alive. And I have, my mother was just a homemaker, and my father was a planerman for the stone company.
Okay. So did he work right here in
Yes.
Lawrence County?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Right.
What mills did he work with? Do you happen to remember that?
First Stone Company.
The first stone
was out on
company.
16th Street.
Okay. And is the mill still there that he worked
Yes,
at?
but it's a different mill now.
Okay, but it's still
It's still
around.
there.
And he's a planerman. I'm very familiar with that. So you know a little bit about the stone industry. Yeah.
Because my husband worked 57 years for the stone, so I know a lot about stone.
Okay. Your husband was Claude was a...
He was a draftsman.
Okay, he was a draftsman. Okay, and your father was a planerman.
Yes.
And about what years would he have worked in the stone industry?
Well, that would have been in the 30s.
In the 1930s?
Uh-huh.
Do you remember now, my grandfather was a stone cutter. My father was a stone cutter. My grandfather worked at the old Ingalls Mill. My father worked in the old Indian Hill Mill in Bloomington for several years and then in town. But I can always remember them coming just covered with stone dust. Can you remember that back years ago when your
Daddy
father
had
would
to
have
go to the basement to take off his dirty shoes and trousers.
Yep. And just look white with that stone dust, didn't they?
They sure did.
And especially in the summertime, those guys worked hard. That was a generation that believed in work.
And the mills were cold in the wintertime.
Yeah, they didn't have much heat in that at all. Did your father talk about that much?
Yes, yes.
My father did. Yeah, you would have had to stand right on the heater at that time to get any heat, and those guys didn't have that opportunity.
No, and they didn't have the clothes and the shoes and things they have today to keep warm.
Right. It seems like to me that the windows were always knocked out at a lot of those mills. You ever notice that?
Yeah, the kids go around. They still do that.
Yeah.
Knock out the windows.
So it was even back then, like that. But at Christmas time, your father got some time off?
No, not much. Of course, if the mill wasn't working, if the work was low, they got time off. But they worked right up to as the boss would say, just how many days is Christmas?
Okay. So some days they just got Christmas off, and that was
Right.
it. Mm-hmm. Okay. Delilah, you told me an interesting story maybe the next to the last time when we talked. Delilah is from Williams. And one of these days, if I do a segment on Williams, we're going to have to maybe talk again because that's an interesting river town.
Yes, it is.
And you told me that you came across a picture of something. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I'd be
Because
happy.
I know that
I'd
that
happy
just
to.
thrilled you to death.
It did. It really thrilled me. My grandfather was a depot operator in Williams for many, many, many years. And I just grew up around the depot down there. You know, my aunt and I, she's a little younger than I am, we were just like sisters, and we just played there. And I got to ride on the train and all this good stuff, you know. But we kind of lost out when they took it out completely. They demolished it and took it away. And so I didn't have a picture of it, and I asked so many people. No one seemed to have a picture. And I thought, there has to be one around somewhere. Well, I ended up, I was talking, one day I went into the museum, and Nellie Reynolds had painted a picture of the Williams Depot. I said, Nellie, that's a picture of the Williams Depot. She said, yes. I said, oh, do you have a picture of that? She said, yes, she did. She brought that to me, and so I can get a copy of it, and I have a copy now. And, oh, you talk about bringing back memories. I tell you, when I looked at that, I couldn't keep from crying hardly, but yet it was tears of joy, you know. And
that brought back just a flood of memories.
It was wonderful. And I was so pleased, and I do have a copy of it now, and I still have the original, and I have to take back to her, of course, but I was so thrilled to get that. It just was wonderful.
Where was that located at, Delilah?
You know, when you go down, I don't know if you're familiar with what they call the Brick Hill. You know, it meets down at the railroad. It goes right straight up there. That's the Brick Hill. Okay, and then there's a road off to the left, goes over to the old mill. Okay, right where it crosses the railroad track there, down the hill and across, right over on the left-hand side if you're coming towards town. But there used to be a little more ground there than there is now. But it was over on the far side, the south side of the railroad.
So when we would
right close to the turn there.
When we would have been coming in from Bedford to Williams, if it would have still been there, we'd have been noticing it. I mean, this was a very right there. It was right there on the railroad.
Just as soon as you come across there.
Is that the hill, the very steep hill? Is that the one that there used to be a grocery store?
Yes.
A brick, and they just tore it down recently. In fact,
and it made me very sad.
You get up at the top of the hill.
But I guess
Williams,
it's necessary.
Williams High School.
Yes.
Okay.
Right at the top of the hill.
Okay. Did you go to Williams High School?
Oh yes, I graduated from Williams.
Okay. And what years would that train depot have been in operation?
Oh dear. I never really thought about that, but
would have been
ever since
still in the 40s, in the 50s? Would it still have been operational?
Oh yes, oh yes. I'm sure of that because I know we used to. They lived up on top of the hill, right at the top of the hill on the right, and we'd walk down the hill down there. You know, when I was just a kid, and I would say in the 40s at least, or even beyond that. So I really don't have any idea. I hadn't even thought about that, really.
And that's something today, like some of those train depots are being preserved.
Oh, I wish that one
had. I wish that one had been preserved.
I do too.
And for us folks that love history and love preservation, it just makes us sick whenever we think about some of these. In fact, but there is a train depot in Bedford that we are preserving today, and if you ever get a chance, now, that is a beautiful building. Some of the limestone work, I don't even know what the address would be on that building, but it is on the north side, right off of I Street, and it's just a beautiful train that they are raising money to preserve now, and I hope they do.
Yeah.
So, Santa Claus was able to find Williams.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. And how many people did you have in your family?
Well, back in the 30s and 40s, I only had my one brother, and he is still living. But then Mom and Dad, later on years, when I was about 13, they had another family. We always said a second family. So I had one sister. She came along when I was 17 years old. And so there's 4 of us. And Dad raised one boy, foster child. He raised him too.
Well, Mary Catherine, I know there's a Christmas story that Lee Hutchison is. I've read his book, and I've talked to Lee now several times, and we still talk quite a bit. But there was actually a Christmas story they had in his book, I believe, about you, right?
Right.
About seemed like people coming down the road and throwing Christmas lights. Tell us a little bit about that story, will you, and about when that would have occurred as well.
That would have probably been in the early 40s. Yes, because we lived on the farm and we didn't have electricity. Long about 1946, 47, we got electricity. REMC came to the country. And we were so proud and so thrilled with the lights and everything. But our parents, of course, they were very, they took care of their money, quite well. And we had to be careful not to spend too much money. So this first year, we had lights on our Christmas tree, our cedar Christmas tree. We always went out to get a cedar tree off at the farm. And we had these lights, but they said, now we've got to conserve energy so we don't run the lights all the time. So my 2 sisters and I had a lot of fun out. We'd say every time a car came down the road, we'd run and turn the Christmas tree lights on so everybody, the neighbors, could all see our lights. And so through the years, it's still been funny. We'd say, here comes a car, turn the Christmas tree lights on.
How far could you see that car coming down the road? Was it pretty flat in that area?
Well, we could see probably a half a mile on each side.
So you knew it was coming.
We could tell.
And I guess cars didn't come down that road very often?
Right.
Yeah. So it was a treat. So did people come by there just to see the lights?
Oh, I don't think so.
No? And what did the bulbs look like?
Well, they were just little cheapy things.
Yeah.
We had always just made, it was really the first time we'd had balls or lights, either one, because we always just made chains and strung popcorn and stuff like that before we got the electricity.
So having electric lights was something.
It was really special.
Oh,
Weren't they bigger bulbs than we have today?
Yes, bigger than
quite large.
Yeah, quite about like this or something. Yeah.
In fact,
I love those old bulbs.
The cedar branches really didn't hold it too well because they were kind of flimsy.
Yeah.
But we were proud of our tree.
Oh, that would have been something to see. Your mother was also an educator. In fact, she was my teacher back in the 5th grade in elementary. She was rather strict. It seemed like that she was of the old school type of teacher. She didn't put up with much, if I can remember right. But I can remember that on Fridays, that she would you always had to stand up and to quote a Bible verse. Now, this was in a public school system back in the 60s. And if you hadn't learned a new Bible verse, then you were expected to say at least a Bible verse. And if you didn't know one, then you quoted the shortest verse in the Bible, which was Jesus wept. I won't tell you how many times I may have had to quote that, but I do know that one by heart, that verse by heart. I know Jesus wept. But I remember that actually happened when I was in the 5th grade at Oleitic Elementary back then. And she always had us that you had to do that on Fridays. But she was one that she wanted you to learn. And she was, again, of the old school. So, okay. So, ladies, at Christmas time, you folks now at this point in time, you're kids. And I'm assuming that it's just like kids today, how they look forward to Christmas. So here's what would happen here in the 1930s and 40s. Now you tell me whether I'm right or wrong. You're getting ready to watch your television shows.
Oh, yes.
No television.
No television?
No television.
You mean we're having a Christmas without television? Mm-hmm. So you didn't have Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Well, I guess even Rudolph the Red-Nosed hasn't even been invented yet.
No.
Because I think that was in the 1950s.
He may have had a red nose, but we didn't know about it.
We didn't know about it at that time. So you couldn't look forward to any kind of television specials. But what about on the radio?
Radio.
On the radio, was there any kind of Christmas
Bing
specials?
Crosby.
Do you remember Bing Crosby
Oh, yes.
at Christmas time?
Uh-huh.
You don't remember, Delilah?
No,
though,
we didn't have any
Christmas
lights.
Oh, you didn't have electricity by this
No.
time. When did you finally have electricity?
Oh, dear. I don't know, probably late 46 or so.
So about the same time that Mary Catherine would have received
'cause
lights. So
we always lived
you-
out in the country, and we didn't have any lines out there, and all. And I know the city people had a long, long time before we ever did, But,
So you went through...
But I remember the first time when we had electricity in this one house, and this was just on what they call the Ridge Road, runs across from Williams over to Fayetteville. And I remember Dad had our house all wired, and they told us exactly when it was going to be turned on. So that night, we went through the whole house and turned every light switch on because we didn't want to miss 1 minute of it. And when it come on, oh, you talk about celebration. We yelled, and it was wonderful. It just really was.
Well, whenever you're used to, what kind of light did you have? Kerosene?
No,
Lamp?
well,
You
kerosene,
kerosene
yes.
some,
And
but what kind of light
We had
did you...
got one of those, I can't even remember.
Aladdin?
Yes, the Aladdin light, which, oh my, when we got that was almost like getting electricity because it was so bright. And it was wonderful. You could really read by it and really see real good.
Okay, what was Aladdin light? What was that like?
It was some kind of gas, wasn't it? It
Yeah,
had this little...
yeah. It was gas, and it had little tiny, I call them little bags that hung on each side. If you touched them, it would just disintegrate. But you was very careful not to, and there's one on each side. And then when you light it, then it fill that up and glow. Just wonderful.
Made it much easier to read.
Oh, yes.
So you would move that around from room to room?
Right.
Or did it stay in one room?
We moved ours.
We kept ours mostly in the dining room where we sat around the table.
Yeah. We would move ours to one room to the other, but not particularly in the bedrooms or anything like that, but just in a couple of rooms in the front.
So you folks would have went through the 30s and World War II without any kind of electricity?
Yes.
You do. Did you have, Janet, did you have electricity?
I was fortunate I had electricity.
And you lived in town?
I lived on First Street
Okay.
Street in Bedford, north.
Okay, I know where that's at. All right. So and you had it then?
Yes.
So the city folk,
Yeah.
did that make you want to live in the city?
Yeah, we talked about the city slickers.
Yeah.
So Janet would have been a city slicker?
Yeah, city slicker
Okay.
And we were the bumpkins from the country.
from the country.
Did you know these people didn't have electricity out
No,
there?
I didn't realize that.
You didn't realize that?
No,
They didn't feel
Well,
sorry
now
for
you
us at all.
know. Okay, we've learned something on Oral History
because we
Project.
all lived in, my grandparents lived in the city, and everybody lived in the city.
Yeah, and so, but you had, okay, so you have electricity.
Yes.
Okay, and so at Christmas time, do you remember any kind of programs then? Any kind of special programs? Did you sit around and listen to any
Well,
kind
just
of...
radio.
Yeah,
That's all we
radio
had.
programs, sure. But any
Or
kind
go to
of-
the movie, and you saw a few things at the movie.
Yeah. What about Jack Benny?
Yes.
Do you
it was
remember
on.
Jack Benny's Christmas?
Oh, sure.
I've listened to some of that. And of course, ladies, my favorite Christmas song of all time is Bing Crosby's White Christmas.
White
Still to this
Christmas.
day,
yes.
I can hear that, and it brings back just a flood. That was my father's favorite Christmas, and I listened to that. And I've talked to so many World War II veterans that that talk about that when they're over Christmas, and when they hear that, still it brings just this flood of emotion
Yes.
to them. And it's a beautiful song, but it hits at being home. And of course, these guys were overseas and so forth. But I've got a 1945 radio, and I can imagine these great programs coming over that, and my grandparents listening to that. So you had Christmas. Well, did you have then at Christmas time, did you actually have a lighted Christmas tree?
Oh, yes. We had the big bulbs you talked about.
Yeah.
Yes. We'd go out and catch, you'd cut your own Christmas tree, bring it in. It was an old cedar tree, put it in some water, and try to keep it for a week. They didn't last too long.
Now, how long did you keep your tree up?
Just barely after Christmas.
Barely after
They were
Christmas?
so dry by then.
Oh, yeah.
You had to pitch them.
Yeah.
Afraid they'd catch on fire.
Sure. And so a few days before Christmas then,
Well, probably a week.
a week before Christmas, you start putting your Christmas tree up. Okay, so on your Christmas tree, you had lights.
Yes.
What else would you have
Well,
put
we'd
on the
string
Christmas tree?
popcorn and wrap ropes of popcorn around the tree. We'd make little paper, little round paper, glue them together and make a chain and put those on the Christmas tree.
Well, there's going to be a lot of people that's going to wonder, why in the world did you put popcorn on a Christmas tree?
Well, we didn't have garland like
So
they have
the-
today.
Well, why didn't you go to the store and buy some
They
garland?
didn't have
it.
What about you folks? What happened?
Enough money. And the
No
popcorn
money?
was pretty.
We didn't have Walmart or Kmart.
No. And besides, you didn't have any money to go
Didn't
buy
have any
anything,
money either.
You know. She was talking about, I made one.
Oh, that's it.
Okay.
That's what we
That's
used to
it.
do.
Well,
And-
you recognize that? Okay.
That's the way we made them.
Yeah, and
When did you make that?
yesterday. I thought, I just might as well, because, I don't know if they even do that back kids in school,
Well, we
used to
did things
do-
like that in
yeah,
school. Yes.
yeah. But I
Okay.
said, the way things are now, computers and all this, I'm sure they don't do this, the kind of things,
No.
I thought, well, I just sit down, and we used to cut them out any magazine. We didn't subscribe to any magazines because we couldn't afford it, but somebody give us some once in a while, a catalog or something, and we'd cut them out. And sometimes we would just take, as kids, we'd make kind of a project. My brother and I, we'd color up paper real solid with crayons, and then we'd
Red
cut
and
them out.
green?
Yeah, red and green, and then we would cut them out, and that was our kind of project before Dad brought the tree in for us to do, and we'd string our popcorn. And you couldn't string your popcorn too early either,
No.
because if you put it back to save, the mice might get in it, so,
Okay.
and of course, it always took a lot of popcorn, because you always ate it along the way while you string it.
String one, eat two.
Well,
Yeah, that's
okay.
right.
So that
That's
was kind of
about the way it was.
a family thing. Then it was kind of a fun
Yes,
thing.
yes.
Now, to me, ladies, I've noticed that popcorn on trees, and I've done like the Spring Mill Christmas and Village, as we just did that. It seemed like to me that would be extremely time-consuming to try to put that needle through those popcorn
We
kernels.
didn't have anything else to do.
That's what I was gonna
We didn't
say.
have any television to see or anything. So
no.
You had time to string
It
popcorn.
really was entertainment, and you look forward to doing that kind of things. And we kind of did it, Mother and us did it as a kind of a project, And Dad, he always took care of the tree, and like you said, it was a cedar tree, and we usually got, he always located one along the road or something, or he knew we lived out in the country, and we might have had one on the acreage that we had or something, And but we never cut it very quickly because, like you said, because it was in where the stove was, which was your heat,
Yeah.
and it dried out very, very quickly. So he never really cut it maybe a couple days or so before we was going to put it up, and we never put it up more than a week. And it came down just as soon as Christmas was over. It came down because of
It was a fire hazard,
Yeah,
wasn't
fire
it?
hazard.
Your dad always went out and cut the tree?
Yeah.
Did
he-
you kids
yeah.
ever go with him?
Oh yeah, we
Okay.
lots of times we did, especially if he found one along the road somewhere that he went to cut. Well, we usually didn't go, but if we went to a farmer friend's house, field or something, we would go with him and cut it.
Mary Catherine, did you ever go with your father to cut the tree?
Oh, yes. And it took us a long time to pick out the one we wanted.
Oh, yes.
Because it had to be perfect, and we kept looking for the perfect one.
Perfect tree, that's right.
Yeah, and so where did you go looking for this tree?
We had a small farm. It was my dad worked for the limestone company too, but his main interest was the farm, and there were lots of cedar trees. They grow quite fluently here in
Yes.
Lawrence County. We'd always put the pretty side out, and the side that wasn't perfect was on the back.
Goes to the back.
And so this was something in itself to look forward to.
Oh, yes.
Of just going out to cut this tree.
That was one of the main things.
Yeah.
and then you made your ornaments out of anything you could find and
Anything.
put pretty material around and tied
Yeah.
on and hang it on the tree.
Yeah.
So now this is going to be a week, give or take a day, before Christmas. Was there any other signs that Christmas was even coming around anywhere else in the community, at schools, anywhere else that you can think of? Now this is just a week before Christmas. At
But
this
we
point
made
in time.
cookies.
Yeah, Mom always made
My
cookies.
grandma was the best
Okay.
cookie maker in Bedford.
So would this started a week before Christmas?
Well, usually.
You
We
started
made
that on
fudge
before
candy,
Christmas.
divinity fudge, pulled taffy,
Well,
made cookies.
Now, I can remember back whenever we started talking about Christmas, maybe Thanksgiving even, or a little bit, maybe the day after we started talking about, but still there wasn't any really Christmas decorations up or anything like that.
No.
Because again, the tree was kind of the center of the
That was
decoration.
about all you had, was
Yeah.
a tree.
Yeah.
Right. But now today,
Oh,
of course,
my.
we're talking about 2007. If someone watches this 50 years from now, we're talking about 2007. But now we start seeing Christmas decorations before Halloween. So in October we start. So
That's
that's
right.
one of the ways that these things have changed. And I think I'm not necessarily too crazy about that, but I guess we won't go there. But so the tree is starting to get up about a week beforehand then, and you're starting already to start putting on your decorations, something like this, the popcorn and all those. Did your parents talk about anything that would have been different when they were children, about the way that you were doing it as children?
Not really.
Because they pretty well done what we
Yeah,
did.
we
You
just-
done what your parents
It's a
did.
pretty well said thing that that's what their parents did, and because like all the rest of us, they didn't have any electric lights or anything like that, so it was pretty much a typical Christmas that they had back when they was a kid.
And so it would be interesting to know when this started changing. Because now, people, if they're younger, are going to listen to this program, some of these things are going to be
Well, it was
foreign
after
to
the
them.
war,
Yeah.
before
Yes.
we had very much Christmas.
Yes, it was. I would say about that time, really. You know, you started seeing more and more of the more lights and more people out in the country had lights and so forth, and so it actually started changing then when the country started getting out in the country started getting electricity.
Somewhat
I'm
after
sure.
the war,
Yeah.
things started changing as far as
Yeah.
Christmas.
Yeah.
During the war, I've been always a Civil War buff and have studied Christmas during the time of the Civil War. And I noticed in 1861 through 1865 that Christmases were a lot of the Santa, even at that time, there was a Santa during that time, but he was decorated, he was dressed in kind of patriotic apparel. And again, the Christmas was involved in the war.
Right.
During World War II, was how was the war affecting Christmas, do you think, in World War II? How did it affect your family? I know maybe,
Well, we were all poor. You got one present,
Right.
and somebody made you something, a new skirt or a new vest or something. You got one present. You got one orange, one apple, one banana in your
and
sock.
And really look forward to that, the fruit, because you didn't have that all the time.
Because you didn't have
or we
fruit
didn't.
all the time. And
So we really looked forward to that when it came Christmas, because we knew we were going to get oranges and apples and bananas and all of that,
well, now kids today are going to go, oh my goodness.
Yeah, and she's
One
right.
present?
Yeah,
One present.
And lucky if you even got that, but we usually got some sort
Something.
of little one.
new
I'll tell you
skirt or a
yeah.
vest or something they'd made over from something.
Well,
And
can you think of really one present back then when you were a kid that really sticks out in your mind?
Well, for your junior year, you got a corduroy skirt that you could write on and draw pictures on, and people sign it. Everybody wanted a corduroy skirt.
And I can actually remember those.
remember
And did you get that for Christmas?
Yes,
And that was a big thing then.
big thing.
Now, was that handmade?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Oh, yes.
And so then this is what they call the senior cords?
Right.
Okay, so your
Boys.
junior, and boys had the pants, you
We had
ladies
skirts.
had the skirts.
See, we didn't wear slacks to school.
Oh, no.
You wore skirts to school.
Well, what about when it's
right.
cold?
You wore a skirt to school.
That's right.
Long
I was
stockings.
You
in
had
the-
long stockings, but you didn't wear slacks.
Was it because the schools didn't allow it, or because your parents didn't
Well,
allow
that
it?
too.
Neither one.
Both.
Because ladies wore skirts.
Yeah.
We were in the band, or I was in the band, played the clarinet, and you wore a white skirt and a red top for stonecutters.
Okay, and you went to Bedford High School.
Yes.
So getting this, did you ask for this skirt? Is that something
Well,
you
not
asked for
necessarily.
Christmas?
Just whatever you got.
Okay.
Right.
Well, I can remember my mother saying that she got a doll on Christmas, and it was just, obviously this was a big event to get this this doll.
I'm not a doll lover, so that wouldn't interest me. I'd rather
Okay.
had a bicycle. I wanted a bicycle. I needed wheels.
Yeah, huh? Well, now, when kids today are going to say, yeah, well, I'd like to have wheels too, but they're four
They want
wheels.
We were glad to get 2 wheels.
Yeah, it gets the 2 wheels, okay. But did you ever get a bicycle for Christmas?
Finally.
You did? How old were you?
Probably in high school.
Okay. Boy, did you come from a rich family?
No. We were
A
all
skirt
poor,
and a
but
bicycle? Yeah. But everybody was poor, right?
Everybody's poor.
Everybody
You
was in the
didn't
same
realize
boat.
it.
Yeah.
We were all poor, so it
That's-
didn't make any difference.
Yeah, you didn't realize it because everybody around you was in the same position. I mean, you know.
We hadn't heard of designer jeans.
No designer, nothing.
And but I can remember one time, which made me very aware that, you know, I guess we don't have any money. I remember, now Mom and Dad never discussed, you know, personal affairs and things like that in front of us. But one evening I heard them talking low, and of course I was very interested, you know. And I heard my dad say, I've got 1/4. That's all the money that we have. He said, now we had a car, they had a car, and evidently he had the car filled up with gas and so forth. And he had been working, it was real late in the fall, and he had been working for the farmers around. And I remember he made $1 a day from daylight till dark. He'd make $1. But I remember this one time he said, he told Mom, he says, I've got 1/4. That's all in the world that we've got. But he had put his application in WPA, and he was going to go to work the next day or the next week. But anyway, he said, I'm going to the store, and he said, what do you think we can get the most use out of until I get paid? What do you need? And Mom said, well, I really think you should buy all the beans that you can buy, because I can fix them several different ways and things that we'll make do, you know. But I do remember that, and I was thinking at the time, I was probably about 6 maybe or so, and I thought, well, that's terrible to think that's all in the money in the world that they had, you know. But you know, and I thought that Christmas, I thought, boy, we'll not get anything, you know. But back then, my dad, we had a cow, and he had to go buy feed, and back then they put the feed sack was printed material, and Mom and I would go with him to pick out what we wanted. So I got to pick out my Christmas dress, because she picked out, and we picked out what I wanted, and she made me a dress that year out of that. And I thought that was the most wonderful thing I ever had in my life, was that dress. It was so beautiful. And
where did you go to get this material?
Down to the Williams
at the
feed store.
Okay, I want to make sure that I heard you.
Yeah.
So your material for your dress was at the feed store?
Yes, full of feed, cow feed.
Okay.
They
Yeah.
put that in
They
material.
they sacked I don't know why they did that, but anyway, that's the way it was. And I had many dresses after that out of the feed sacks, you know, and a lot of people, they made quilts out of them and things like that, you know. And too, another thing that we would do, my mother was a seamstress, you know, she sewed everything and just made everything really nice. And she had an old treadle machine, and I remember she would take the remnants of that then, and when we decorated our Christmas tree, we also did the popcorn, and then we would take the printed material and tie little bows around all over our cedar tree out of this. So that was some of the scraps then, you know. So they didn't waste anything, you know.
That's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up, Delilah, because when I think of my grandmother, they didn't waste anything.
Oh,
everything
nothing.
was.
You used
You didn't dispose of stuff like we do today,
Oh,
did
no.
you?
What we didn't use on the tree like that, which was a little frivolous, as they would call it, you know, but it made our tree look very nice. Then the other part that was left out of the feed sack went into quilt pieces. Or comfort, they called it back then. You know, you'd make it, and then you'd tie the quilts for warmth, you know, to use on your beds and so forth.
And so you got a new dress made out of this feed sack.
Yes, and that was one of my prized things.
Can you remember
Well,
what
they
color
were
it was?
pretty.
Blue.
You can still remember that?
Yes, it was blue
So
flowers.
you still have a kind of a visualization of
Yes,
what
it was a tiny blue flower. I remember. Oh, yes, I loved it. It was very dear to me.
Mary, did you get these dresses made from feed sacks?
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Pajamas and
Yes.
tablecloths. And
Yes.
Mother even made shirts for Dad to wear on the farm.
Right. Right.
Another thing that we did that for Christmas, well, it wasn't just for Christmas, but do you remember the old Spur filling station where we got the glassware?
Yes.
It's called depression glass now, the
Yeah.
pink glass, and Mother used to save those and give those pieces to others for Christmas.
Right. Oh,
You buy
they
so
made
many
do with
gallons
everything.
Of gas and you get a glass dish.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
and that
You
was
get
wonderful.
plates and bowls.
Yes.
And those are really collector's things now.
Right.
So she would give them at Christmas time?
Yes.
And so in picking out of these feed sacks, then so did mainly the men, your fathers, did they go and pick these out then? Or
Oh,
did-
no. Ours didn't.
Mother
Mother and I always went with Dad to pick out, because we sometimes you wouldn't, one sack wouldn't be enough, maybe for a dress for her or something that she wanted to make. So we'd go back hoping they still had that pattern, because they would change patterns from time to time, hoping we could get that same pattern. But if we didn't, then we'd pick us out something else, and then, and because he usually just bought one sack at a time, because
Okay.
he couldn't afford to buy, 2 or
Right.
3, whatever. But, oh, yes, that was wonderful when they come out with those feed sacks with the printed material. We thought we'd done died and gone to heaven.
Do you remember about what year that would have been, whenever they
Oh,
started
my.
doing that approximately? Would have been during the
38?
Depression?
Maybe.
38?
Yeah, maybe
Before the
38.
war?
Yeah, oh, yes, it's before
Yes.
the war.
Before the war, but this continued during the war years.
As far as I know, it did.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, it was
That'd be-
several years there they had the printed sacks.
Well,
If a man had a coat that they'd outgrown or changed sizes, you took that and made vests or skirts or something out
Yeah.
of the men's suits.
Yeah, when
the children would get the value out of them. Because the material was still good.
well, one feed sack surely wouldn't have gone too far into making
well, two
a
would.
dress or
Yeah,
two
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 would.
would.
That's
Feed
really-
sacks are,
Yeah.
Yeah,
that long
yeah,
anyhow.
Yeah, so it would be
So-
approximately, probably, I don't know, probably a yard and a half, and then be about a yard wide or so, or maybe even 2 yards. Time you did the whole thing. But yeah, it would usually take 2 alike.
Okay.
But Dad never could afford to buy but one at a time, so that's the reason we always went with him, to see if we could get the one to match if we was going to make something that took more than one. But me being small, he just took us, or maybe she might make me a skirt sometime or something like that, or a blouse. But it was very interesting. And
Yes, that sure is.
they sure knew how to stretch things, to
Right.
make do. And it was a very, very happy Christmas. I mean, Lord, we didn't know we was poor.
No,
we always had lots to eat, always, because we always had raised our own garden, and Mom canned, and we had a cow, so we had our
We did
milk
too.
and so forth. And so, as
Grandma
kids, we
had
didn't
chickens,
know.
so
Yeah,
we
oh
always
yeah,
had
Mom always
chickens.
raised chickens, and
So did you folks have a special dinner on Christmas Day?
oh
then?
yes, it was
usually a
always-
big hen or a duck.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We always had fried chicken.
And was this something that you normally didn't have? Then
No.
was this something? But
Once a
it
week.
was just something that
once
everybody
a
liked.
week.
Yeah, we
Once
had,
a week you
yeah,
had fried chicken.
Yeah.
Did you only have the meat once a week? Back then?
no.
I know. You must have eaten a lot of beans. You had a lot of beans. You had.
That's
to eat,
right. That's right, because
On
that's a lot of
Monday?
good protein. Of course, we
Right.
didn't know back then that was all this good stuff.
Are you sick of beans now?
Nope.
I still eat them, and my husband, bless his heart, nothing made him any happier. I could cook beans for him every day. His favorite was beans and cornbread and fried potatoes.
Fried potatoes.
And he didn't care whether he had any meat or not. I mean, sometimes I'd fix meat. He liked fried pork chops and things like that,
Yeah.
But, he loved beans. And he was born and raised on beans. He was out of a family of 12, so they
had beans
They
a
had
lot.
beans
Well,
every
we
day.
had a lot of squirrel, a lot of
yes.
rabbit,
Okay.
Right, we did too.
There's
Dad
another
would go
thing that
hunting and get
happened, hunting back and supplemented
Yeah.
your meat.
And
Yes,
fish.
Yes.
They went fishing
We used
a
to
lot.
have deer. My grandma and my aunts and uncles used to come to our house for Christmas, and we always had, well, we didn't always, but when they had deer, they'd have it. We found out later one year that the deer was really a goat.
I beat a few of them too.
You know, now we have deer just everywhere, but back then
No, very few.
there wasn't as
No,
many
that's
deer,
right.
was there? So
No,
it was
they
more rare to have
Right.
a deer at this point in time.
Yeah.
Christmas morning, is that when you would have opened your present, or would it have been Christmas Eve?
Christmas
Christmas
Eve for us.
morning.
I was going to say, it was always Christmas Eve for us.
All three of you?
And
was
I still
Christmas
carry
Eve?
that through now. My
Okay.
Christmas, I have all my kids, grandkids and everything, they always come in on Christmas Eve and we have our meal and then we open all the presents and
I
everything.
was fortunate. I had 2 grandmothers and 2 grandfathers, and we would all get together at our house
Yeah.
because we had the biggest dining room.
So on your Christmases in the past, Janet, was grandparents,
Yes.
cousins, aunts, or was it just grandparents in your family?
Usually just grandparents in our family.
Okay, and so,
Brothers and sisters of some of them.
and you'd have a big dinner. We're thinking about kind of the customs of your family, so that was evidently one of your customs that you would have on Christmas Eve, a
Yes.
big a dinner. Did you do anything else special during that time?
No.
That was pretty much the
That's
dinner
about
was
it.
the
Church.
focus.
They always had something
Had
at church.
a church
We all
service.
went to, mhm.
So would you went to a church service and then maybe to dinner or on Christmas Eve?
Well, whatever day that we all went to church if it was on Christmas, but
Yeah,
otherwise
yeah.
we still had Christmas dinner on Christmas.
Right. And so that you always look forward to that then, that
Yes.
Christmas Eve and every time. Mm-hmm. What about your family, Delilah? What was it something similar?
Back when, way back, we usually opened our presents on Christmas Eve, but we always had on Christmas Day. Back then, the grandparents on both sides would come, and of course they had little ones, younger ones too, of my age. In fact, my aunt is a little bit younger than I am, but they had children that was still home, and they would come, and we always had a big dinner for them, and we all got together on Christmas Day then, and that was just an every year thing. That's just the way it was. And
So did everybody open up a present then if they had one?
no,
I mean, or
no,
was it just
no,
kids
no,
that
it
had
was
presents?
just the children. Actually, Christmas Eve was just our own private Christmas,
Okay.
Mom and Dad and the kids. It was just our Christmas.
Did you kids, were you able to make anything for your parents? I know you didn't have the money, but did you make anything for your parents?
I ever did.
Yeah. Did you, and obviously they made what they could, for you. I
Right,
mean, obviously,
right.
but like I say, they didn't just go out shopping at the store.
Oh, no.
That wasn't
No.
an option for people.
My grandma always made me something from my hope chest. Tea towels, hot pads, things like that out of the feed sacks. Then you got something nice.
We're back to those feed sacks again.
That's another thing too. My mother used to do. I remember one Christmas in particular. She asked me if I would like to have a dollhouse. Oh, I said yes. Now I didn't have dolls per se because I had what I call corn cob dolls. She taught me how to make the corn cob dolls, and she sewed quite a bit. So she would help me make dresses, and I would help her, that. So she said, "Well, I thought you and I could work together, and we'll make you a dollhouse." So she had a big cardboard box, about yay big, and we worked and we cut the windows out, and she made curtains and put in it for me and things like that. So I do, and it was out of the feed sacks, and I remember that very, very much, and I have thought about, especially after you called, I thought, I wonder what ever happened to that dollhouse, I wish I'd give anything in the world if I
still
had
have
it, but I don't. But I do remember that, and I had the corncob dolls, and I do remember later on, then back when they began to get a little bit more money, and he worked for WPA, I remember I did get a doll one time, a real doll, you know. But I was very happy with what I had, you know. It was sufficient, and I was thrilled to death with the dollhouse. That was great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, it was just more or less homemade things that, you know, that you didn't have all the time, and that Mom and Dad tried to come up with the idea to fix us, you know, and
Right.
and it was good, and we was happy, and we didn't know we were poor. We always had lots to eat. I never went to bed hungry. I can never say one of those people that say, well, we were hungry back then. Well, I can't say that because we always had, I always felt like we had more than when we shared. We did share with a lot of people, you know, because Mom always canned things, and we always had a big garden, and we had a lot of vegetables and things, you know. I guess that's where I get my love of gardening and canning. I still can.
Right.
you
Well, I know you still have
you know,
huge gardens.
and I love that kind of stuff, and it was just the way we was brought up, and we were happy, and we didn't know we were poor. We had plenty to eat.
Right.
You know, and Dad did have an old whippet car.
And what's that again? A whippet? A whippet car?
It was called a whippet.
And
a whippet car.
Who made that?
Oh dear.
Was there a whippet company? Or was that the
You know, I
nickname of the
don't
car?
know.
What
That's
was
the name of the
it was
car.
the name of the car. It was
it?
whippet.
It was a whippet car.
A whippet car. I can see it. It was just kind of squarish out, you know.
Yeah.
I can see that, you know. And I remember when he got that, then after he was working for WPA.
You thought you were rich then.
Oh, yes, very rich. We had a car. You know.
Well, so up at that point in time, then you probably didn't make very many trips into Bedford
Oh no.
up until that time. So
'Cause the gas
Bedford
was-
must have seemed like it was so far
Oh,
away.
it was. It was miles and miles away. And besides that, gas was awful high. I think it was like 8 cents a gallon or something like that. You know?
goodness.
And that was high,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, of
and
course,
then-
what were they making an hour? Even WPA.
Well, yeah,
You know.
I don't remember what he made on WPA, but it was certainly more than $1 for a whole day's work, you know,
Yeah.
more than that.
People
But,
loved getting those WPA
oh,
jobs.
My
didn't they?
dad
Yes.
helped build a stone fence around Otis Park and the band shell.
Yes.
He works on that.
And they're still around today from what they did.
Should I tell him about the WPA deal?
Sure, sure.
That I told you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Well, I remember when Dad did get his job, he was thrilled to death to get it.
Yes.
But my dad, you would have to know my dad. He was very, well, how should I put it? Very proud person, and he always wanted to know that he did provide for his family, and they always had plenty to eat. That was one thing that he was very adamant about. And we might not have electricity and all these other things, but we had, you know, we didn't know he was poor. I'll put it that way. But he did finally had to get down to the last quarter, I was telling you, and he had applied and got a job for WPA. Well, of course, these ladies will probably remember it back then, but the younger generation don't know, I guess. But anyway, they called them WPA workers. They said, we piddle around. I mean, you know, we piddle around. Well, that didn't go well with my father because he was a hard worker, you know. And he really hesitated, other than he knew he needed the job and he needed the money, so he gave in and got his job. Well, they also called them Wheaties. Well, I remember, I said, I can see this in my mind's eye after you call me. You know, I could see my brother and I standing in the doorway with my mother as my dad went out with his dinner bucket out to the old whippet car. And he got almost to the car, and Mom said, "Bye, Wheatie." Dad turned around, he said, "What did you say?" She said, "I said, bye, sweetie."
By Sweetie.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and
That was quick thinking.
oh, that was very quick thinking. And so reluctantly he started to get in the car, and the birds was singing. And Dad's going, "Wheatie, Wheatie, Wheatie." He said, "Oh, even the damn birds is calling me Wheatie."
Well, and was Wheatie because of the WPA?
Yes, yes. They call it. at least in our neck of the woods, they called them Wheaties. If they work on WPA, they call them Wheaties.
I wonder why.
I don't know where that name come from.
Well, I'll
I
have to kind of look into
yeah,
that.
I
Why it
wonder
was
where
called
that started
Wheaties.
from, And
And then the
WPA
weed
stood
piddle
for
around.
Weed Piddle Around.
I've heard that before. But Wheaties, I'm going to have to find out about
Was
that.
that before
That's
Wheaties cereal?
I don't know.
I don't know if Wheaties around.
I don't know.
Some
that
people,
came from-
I'm sure it
I
was.
know.
that all they had
I'm
was
sure.
Wheaties to eat.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, Mary Catherine, what about, was there a special skirt, dress? Was there a special Christmas gift that really sticks out in your mind back when you were?
The one that I remember best of all, I must have been about 9 or 10 years old, and Daddy had a big brush pile at the back of the place, and he said, well, we're going to go out this Christmas Eve and burn this trash pile. So it was cold, and there was snow on the ground, and we all put on our boots and went out and enjoyed the big fire. And when we got back to the house, now we always, instead of putting hanging stockings, we just had a chair. So I had a chair for each one of us had our own chair, and I'll never forget, I had this real pretty doll, and I named her Janet. So I kept this Janet doll for a long time, and that's my favorite toy.
Do you still have that?
No, I don't.
Well, wouldn't it be nice to still have that?
It could be. My sister lives in our old farmhouse, and every once in a while she'll come out with something. The other day she came and gave me some little doll dishes that she had found, and that was a nice little memory too of the doll dishes.
Yeah. Oh,
Now, see, I never
That's
liked
special.
dolls. I had a scooter and a tricycle and a bicycle.
you were a tomboy, Janet. Yeah, you were a tomboy.
No dolls.
Yeah. Ladies, believe it or not, an hour has already lapsed.
Oh, you're kidding.
It goes by that quick.
You said it'd go fast.
It does go by quick. Once you start walking down there, and I guarantee you, probably the next few days, you'll be thinking about things, and hopefully people that are going to be watching this program, it's going to spark some memories in their past. Kind of when we wrap this up, when I look back now, and they were very special times, our Christmases in the past. But maybe you will agree with me, but it's not because of, you obviously didn't have much money. It's not because of really necessarily the gifts that we received or the ornaments, and even these things that bring back special memories, or even the trees that we brought in a week before. But it's the people.
That's right.
When we look back there and we think about, and it's that warm feeling that you get when you think about those people that were involved with those Christmas pasts.
Right.
And part of this program and part of what we want to always do is we want to remember these folks because they are an enormous part of our life today. And when I think about those Christmases, well, I don't have some of these people around anymore. A lot of them, they're already gone. But they'll never take this away from me, these Christmases of the past. And so we remember those special times, but it's also those special people. I just want to close and say that in every person, there's a special story. And we've been finding this with our special people. And so many people in the past of your grandparents, your great-grandparents, of your neighbors, friends that you've had all of your lives and maybe are gone now. But these people and their stories are worth preserving. Have a nice Christmas.